Hi, my name is Nikki Seward and I'm from Snug Harbor, and I was asked to give a short presentation for the Delta Protection Commission regarding Delta history and water conveyance plans. My focus usually is navigation and boating recreation, so you'll see those kind of maps involved in this. I have collected a lot of maps, put some of them into slides, and I apologize I can't be there in person. I got one of those end of summer colds, and I don't want to give it to anybody else, so you get to see this on video instead. Anyway, I'm going to go very fast. And a lot of you Delta people know this history, but it's important to realize how long they've been talking about this conveyance. So what we're looking at now is in the 1850s, as you know, the first surveys happened in the Delta. This particular map shows going up the Sacramento River, and this point here has a map showing what would be Cache Slough, going over to Steamboat Slough and the Sacramento River. This particular map shows Steamboat Slough this direction and what we call Setter Slough on this direction. It was named something different, and this is just to emphasize that boating was the first means of transportation in Northern California. Another look at the same pictures. Here is a 1855 first survey for the railroads, and I actually have the original map and book with all the descriptions that went along with this, and it's kind of interesting to read the people who are involved in those surveys, what they wrote about the time and what it looked like. And then there's all kinds of accounts. There's Mr. Hutchings' California Magazine, which gave a lot of stories about the Delta and Northern California in particular. Very interesting to look at some of the past stuff. This is a more modern sketch based on the older sketches. And as you know, Steamboat Slough and the Sacramento River over by Alton, in the past it was called Old River Sacramento or just Old River. In the 1871 Hutchings sketch in his book, he talks about the salmon on the Sacramento River, and this is a view of Lower Junction of main Sacramento River and Steamboat Slough. So we can assume this is what it looked like all along the bank, because it takes fresh water to have big tall trees, and that's what was all along here. Here's more sketches from the 1850s to 1870s, but this is a more modern rendition in color. The San Joaquin River, we often see this. Lots of the government agencies use this picture and say this is the Ho Delta, this is the San Joaquin River, looking at Mount Diablo, and it definitely shows a lot of tules. And so looking at boating traffic that has to do with conveyance, so you're going to see why I focus on this. By the 1870s, because of the hydraulic mining, a lot of the waterways in the Delta were getting silted in, and that included Steamboat Slough and the Lower Sacramento River. And a lot of there were articles about how the river was devoid of traffic because of the silting in, and so there was a big push to stop the hydraulic mining up in the Sierra foothills, so that there wouldn't be more silting. Here is a 1871 Bancroft map, and it shows where on this map Sacramento River is basically where Steamboat Slough is now, and we often would see this transition of the names or locating the rivers in different areas. This is a map you see, it's over in Rio Vista, this recognition of the Pony Express using Steamboat Slough and the California Steam Navigation Company. They used Steamboat Slough because it was the quicker route. But sailboats and smaller boats tended to go along Old River, Sacramento, because there was a lot of landings there for them to go and sell and buy. By 1873, we find that the state has done a survey, and they're going to promote it's the Board of Commissioners of Irrigation, and they've decided that they want to promote more reclamation in the Delta area, and also improve the navigable waterways and define which ones are the navigable waterways. By 1880, there's so much pressure to stop the hydraulic mining and stop the silting in that there is legislation that stops the hydraulic mining, and there begin plans to dredge out or clear out places like Steamboat Slough. This is a re-rendition of 1880 cartoon in the Illustrated Wasp, and this one was done in 2002, and you can see it Sacramento Historical Society. And basically it demonstrates how there was going to be the sloughs and waterways were going to be silted in. This is 1880 plans are reported in what was the Sacramento Bee, or becomes the Sacramento Bee, and it talks about more snags being pulled and not necessarily dredging being done yet, and but it shows the importance of the waterways in to and from Sacramento. Here we see a 1901 milk map, and it shows the waterways to Sacramento and the waterways down to Stockton, and these ports were definitely active even if real big ships weren't going along there. By 1886, there's the Hall map. We hear about the William Ham Hall maps, and very detailed survey of the Delta, and the North Delta Islands are fairly well defined, and names don't change. After this, the South and Central Delta, those islands are still not yet defined, but it is interesting to know the names of the rivers. Here you see Old Sacramento River, and this is all of it is Steamboat Slough. So that Hall map, I'm going to go back to that for a minute. The Hall map, it was not just for irrigation, but they were looking at irrigation more statewide. It just wasn't Delta, it was statewide at that point in time. And there were surveys to reach to that, to become that 1886 map, and this shows individual surveys that happened in the Delta region. A really good reference to all of this is the 1959 Thompson dissertation, and then also the Pacific Historian does a summary of it if you want to look at the reclamation history. By 1906, the state is moving forward, and the federal government is funding very thorough survey of the Delta. And here, I have this book, the survey, and it's a book that unfolds to a whole bunch of maps. And this is an example, again, what the San Joaquin River area look like. Anyway, these maps unfold, and they're huge, and it's very detailed, and it covers the survey of the rivers. So this is San Joaquin River, and it had these. Here's Rye Island, but that's the Rye Island down in the Sassoon Marsh. A lot of people don't know there are two Rye Islands in the Delta. One is over where Snug Harbor is, and the other one's down in the by Roe Island down in the Sassoon Bay, and that causes a lot of people sometimes. So we see Venice Island here anyway, and you see how detailed this 1906 survey is. And then what's interesting about the survey is they do 1 foot cross sections going across some of the islands, and you really see the depth at that time. This is of the San Joaquin area, but what you don't see is all the little squiggly little waterways that this organization called SFEI, San Francisco Estuary Institute, are saying was part of the Delta before it got reclaimed. We're just not seeing that in the maps of the survey of 1906, and this area, the Delta, had not been really reclaimed, and we still don't see that in the cross sections. Anyway, so now we get to 1914, and roads are being improved. The levees in this area are being improved. Here's Ileton right here. Rio Vista's over here. And the post offices then follow this route, and that helps these towns to really develop more. By the 1920s, 1930s, the riverboats are still running. It's the smaller boats. The Delta King and Queen are running up and down, going different directions, all the way up to Sacramento. There's still ferries in the Delta, and we can see Steamboat Slough here, and what's called the Ashley Ferry is where the Real McCoy Ferry, or the Rio Vista Ferry, it's also called, is right in this area. And we hear more and more about these plans to divert water. And so by the 1930s, the federal government does a project to, and that's the first of the major water projects. And as part of that, we see the federal improvement of certain levees like Ryer Island and Grand Island. Those are called the federal project levies. And what we also see is, and I'm going to enlarge this one. Let's see if we can get it big enough. We see, oh, sorry, didn't get clear enough. Very good survey of the lands. You can actually see the full map. It's very large at this website here. This deltarevision.com has a bunch of maps and surveys. And this 1935 soil map is interesting because the soil types don't really change, and what you find is maps done in the last 10 years, and some of the reports seem to confuse where islands are and also confuse the soil types. So it's been interesting to watch that process, but it turns out it's very important to watch it because mistakes have been made that will affect the future of the Delta if not corrected. Anyway, 1949, we see that the Sacramento Ship Channel is also being planned, along with the project levee improvements and water conveyance, the federal project conveying water to Southern California. In 1945, we see this Delta Cross Channel Plan. And this is, they also call it Central Valley Basin Plan Water Resources Development. And this is the statewide plan. I do have the full map, a large map, that I plan to bring to show, but since I can't be there, you can't see it, but you can see it at this Delta Revision website, full size. And you can see that the plan was and has been to improve the waterways along the Mokelumne, and therefore, and then divert it at what's called Green's Landing and increase diversion off the Sacramento River, get it down flowing to the south end of the Delta so it can be exported. And in the meantime, the farming is getting really big in the Delta. Even the up in the North Delta, it had been already a lot of farming. This is a picture actually that was on Ryer Island. That was at the Rio Vista Museum years ago, but now I don't see that picture there anymore. But there was farming all over Delta by the 1940s. All the Delta Islands were already reclaimed. So a lot of the storage projects and all that from that, we'll go back from the Water Resources Development Plan, they start being built. And by 1965, and then again in 1980, there is this plan that was named the Peripheral Canal concept. This is a 65 map. And it was the recommended plan to do this peripheral around the Delta. And again, here we see Green's Landing. And this peripheral canal actually starts below Freeport and goes around. Here is another one, 1966. It starts at just above Green's Landing and goes around. And however, we know that one wasn't built. And then all the way up into 1980 and then 82, the state keeps coming up with all these different plans, but the Delta is already, the ecology is in decline, the fish species are starting to show signs of extinction, and there's other proposals. So here's two other ones. It's called the Joint Point Barrier Plan, and it puts barriers in all of these points, so freshwater stays in this area of the Delta, and West Delta is allowed to be like brackish water or maybe full salinity water. It was not clear on that. Anyway, so this is one of the barrier projects. There's another proposal back in the 1960s, the Chips Island barrier, where this barrier could open and close, and the idea was to take all of the Sacramento River water, let it get through the delta, and then go on down to these pumps. The problem with that is if that barrier accidentally didn't open in a big flood year, it would flood everything. But still, it's, if the state really believes, and the federal government believes that there's actually going to be such global warming that the sea level rises, this might be the best option to protect a huge area of California, the central California. Anyway, so 1960s, 1990s, boating is very big in the Delta. Sorry, this looks a bit blurred. This is a nautical chart showing here's Isleton down here. Here's Ryer Island, Snug Harbor right there, Rio Vista over here. This is Sacramento River, Steamboat Slough, and the Delta Cross Channel Gate is opened up for boating, which makes it great because most boaters are in the Delta go up to the Meadows, which is up in this area, and it's a favorite boating area. And here's a 1975 Delta boating map, and you'll see the emphasis on Steamboat Slough actually along in here, and even Sutter Slough. And we don't see the cross channel in here. It was more used for conveyance rather than letting people go through get into the meadows, so people would have to go down to 3 Mile Slough and then up along in this area. So in 1978 to 1982, or 1980 really, there's a really good survey done by a guy named Brian Atwater and his crew and the state surveyors, and it compares the older original maps of the Delta compared to the new ones, and that's a very useful series of maps, and you can see that map series at this website again, because you can't find it on the state website, so it got posted here instead. Anyway, these maps were done in preparation for building a peripheral canal and planning. However, we know in 1982 it was voted down. So here's another planning map, 1975, and this is a plan for flood control in the Delta. And note that this is a yellow bypass, and it's kind of expanded, and it is intended to be flooded, just like McCormick-Williamson Track, Dead Horse Island. Those islands get flooded intentionally to when there's extra water in the Delta. And it's kind of interesting to note that the flood capacity or water carrying capacity of these years of planning are no different than what is basically being said in the 2012 plan for flood control. The difference, however, is that these waterways were dredged after this, and that was one of the purposes of this plan for flood control in 1975, but we still need dredging over here in 2012. Going back to 1978 that should be actually to 2000, not just 1995. We see the Atwater maps. We see there's historical ecological studies going on. This is a San Francisco Estuary Institute, and they come up with their version of the Delta, and that's a whole nother story. Anyway, so that brings us to the year 2000, and with a push from some Bay Area funders, we see the CalFed preferred alternative, and that is the same plan as that 1945 plan to take Sacramento River water, divert it through the central part of the Delta for export. So they say, okay, let's move forward with this. And I want you to see who said, let's do this. Here are the state water contractors that benefit from all this conveyance planning and everything that's being built already. And you can see, yes, there are some Northern California areas. Solano County's one. We see Alameda. We see San Jose area, Marin area. north of the delta up in here, Sacramento County and north of that, and but most of the benefits going to go to the Southern California cities and a little bit in Kern and those areas. So that tells you who's getting the benefit of all of this. So I want to show you some planning that was going on. So from 2000 to 2012, there's been thousands and thousands of different reports and plans, hundreds of different agencies, and it all boils down to they're talking about different ways to export water and what's the best way without totally destroying the delta. Supposedly that's what they they want to avoid destroying the delta, but they don't want to consider taking less water. Anyway, here's one of the planning maps, and I just anybody who knows the delta has to laugh at this map. Obviously, these the people who drafted this particular map put Pearson's district where Ryer Island is. They put, well, you can see it, all the different wrong island names all along here. Also note that there were other planning maps that pretty much eliminated Delta, eliminated the Sacramento River, basically shows the San Joaquin River only to Port of Stockton, and I've seen some maps where it's Port of Rio Vista, but basically some of the plans just eliminate the rivers. Here's some very detailed planning maps and studies where it talks about flow and how they can get flow to go in different directions and get the fish to go in certain ways when they want them to. And other really detailed maps. You see how they USGS is practicing opening and closing the Delta Cross channel gates, and they test what is the impact to salinity, and hence on June 1st, 2004, this is the log from USBR, and it says Jones Track levee failure, June 1st, 2004. So, and they closed the gates because they were doing some sort of practice of something. Anyway, so here's that 1945 plan. Here's Staten Island right there, and we know the state bought Staten Island in 2003 to use for either in Delta storage or other restoration projects. And here's other names of other plans over the last 12 years. TDF, that's through Delta facility. This is called this is USR, and they called it the Armored Aqueduct. This is Echo Crescent Middle River Conveyance. These are all different names for the same conveyance planning. Then we know about the in-Delta storage plans. That is all part of it. Then we hear about the in-Delta improvements package. That's what they've been doing. They split that one up into S-DIP and N-DIP. That is the big dip, meaning North Delta Improvement Package and South Delta Improvement Package. Then we have the FEMA planning that that coincides with everything, and that is another story too. More central conveyance plan names. Napa proposition. Here's central conveyance action. Here is Delta National Park. Then we've got another one called here's the Bay Delta Conservation Plan one. Here's the Through Delta Plan, which is also the same as the Armored Aqueduct. Then we have things like, they call this the Large Owner Access. They also call it the Freshwater Corridor. All these, and the Fish Migration Pathways, and that's the Freshwater Corridor. All of that is the same thing. It's that 1945 plan, basically. And then we also have, like the Delta Protection Commission, at the same time is planning for Delta sustainability by emphasis on marinas and the agricultural resources that'll be here. And they have these different NHA themes, but really in a lot of the paperwork they don't really talk about boating recreation. They talk about recreation, but boating recreation has been such a huge part of the Delta, and if there isn't water, there won't if there isn't deep enough water, let's put it that way, there won't be the boating recreation we've known. Anyway, so in the meantime, other agencies are planning. It's not just about restoration and water conveyance. any EIR, EIS has to talk about transportation. So I went and looked at what is California saying. And there's a plan called 2035, and it was kind of surprising to see that their goods corridor program does not include Highway 12. I notice Highway 84, 220, 160 are not included in some major planning in California. When you look at here, for example, is Sacramento's blueprint. That's their plan for transportation. Notice no major roads anywhere in the Delta. What happened to Highway 12, Sacramento? Anyway, by 2012, you need to know how much conveyance work has already been done north of the Delta. Since people north of the Delta saw all this other stuff going on, and USBR and, Sacramento, they said, okay, fine, we're going to start taking some of the water out of the Sacramento River before it even gets down to the Delta. So we had the Red Bluff Diversion Dam, which is a fish screen and additional diversions that put it into the Tahoma-Clusa Canal. This is 2,500 cubic feet per second capability, is capability to expand to more. But that isn't all existing water rights. That's planning for extra capacity as well for the future. This map right here shows there's a total of 9 additional new intakes, most of which are north. 6 of those are north of the Delta, and so that's water that will not be flowing into the Delta that used to flow into the Delta. Going on, I'm looking at some more of them. These are actually ones in the Delta. This is down here. It's Victoria Canal, and this is Contra Costa Water District. East Bay Mud did this. It's a new water siphon. This is the one over at Freeport, and this is the one on Empire Tract, which is right there, and that's City of Stockton that built that. Those are water export facilities that are going to be taking water out of the Delta. And while the Freeport one is, it seems like a smaller one compared to everything else we're hearing about, what's really important about that Freeport plan is that it included modifications to the Folsom South Canal that ended up or resulted in the Folsom South Canal connecting to the McCollum Aqueduct, which in itself, that is now a peripheral canal. It goes with that capability, and notice how close that it goes to Clifton Court Forebay. This capability right here created a peripheral canal around the Delta, and it was a coordinated effort with East Bay Mud and USBR and Department of Water Resources. And along with that comes, we see the control structure for Folsom Dam, which has a capability of taking 300,000 cubic feet per second out of Folsom Dam. That means water that will not flow into the Sacramento River and Delta. It will have the capability of being bypassed around the Delta, and that is scheduled to be completed by 2015. So in the meantime, what we also see is these little regional projects called their proposed local projects with all combined, and this is the Coalition to Support Delta Projects that just had a meeting today. I didn't get to go to that one. And you combine the projects, and here's that 1945 map again, and you see what they're proposing. It's the same thing. It's expanding these waterways in here to siphon off more Sacramento River water for exports. And then finally we get to the Bay Delta Conservation Plan, which is really this plan that's been diverting everybody's attention away from the real issues, and that's everything being built right now. And in the meantime, this plan, if it's approved, would divert whatever water's left after all those north of the Delta diversions are completed. And the preliminaries of the Bay Delta Conservation Plan show these effects. This is a 2009 meeting, and it's it's the effects. Now, this is supposed to be the effects of the Bay Delta Conservation Plan of 9,000 cubic feet per second from the Sacramento River. That's assuming that there was about 18 million acre feet per year flowing on the Sacramento River. What happens when you don't have the flows that this is based on? Right now, this 9,000 cubic feet per second Bay Delta Conservation Plan would double the salinity in the Ileton area of the Delta and above us. And that, what happens when there isn't even the other water flowing into the Delta? It's really should be concerning to everybody who cares about the Delta. So to validate diverting more water from the Delta, the fish scientists have decided that the Delta has to have more variable high and low flows. There are a lot of negative effects to all of us in the Delta, and you can read all of those, but please pay attention. A lot of things are being built. It's not just about the Bay Delta Conservation Plan. Everything else going on makes it look like we're going to end up with what this map down here is the National Atlas. And you can see Sacramento River that used to really show fairly strongly in the older maps. It gets cut off at the Rio Vista area while the San Joaquin does continue to Sacramento. It's pretty concerning to see what's going on. This is a graphic I actually did with some help and just showing what's going to happen to Steamboat Slough if they keep diverting all the water. The same thing will be what it would look like that in front of Ileton too. So it's very concerning. Here's links to some of the maps and presentation I used, and I hope that you will pay attention. There's other maps to look at, but in the meantime, thank you for watching.